Okay, we're going to start the broadcast. How to do killer presentations that stick. We're going to start a broadcast today. I'm going to show you how to use PowerPoint and Google Docs and do presentations that people remember. So we'll start the presentation right now with the first slide. Presentation software has been around since 1988. There's been little research that informs us how it's used. The research vacuum has been filled by conventional wisdom and commonly accepted beliefs that guide behavior. Some examples are use no more than 6 lines of text and 6 words per line. But new research shows that even that amount can be a recipe for information overload. Other examples people are using are putting titles on slides, shrinking text and visuals to make them fit the slide, which will lead to the following: to presentation overload. Here in meetings, in the lecture hall, and in the classrooms, which can lead to stress. What price do we pay for presentation overload? Ineffectual communications at every level presents a major strategic risk for you. In many organizations, presentation overload has been a vague problem. They know about it, but they have not pinned down what it does in numbers. This has changed with some important research in the field of cognitive science. Through the 1990s and beyond, Richard Mayer and his colleagues at the University of California, Santa Barbara have been conducting dozens of research studies on multimedia learning, the potential for using words and pictures together to promote human understanding. The studies have resulted in a substantial body of research with clear recommendations for multimedia design principles. The research marks a presentation turning point because it centers not on technology, but on the way the human mind works. Most presentations look particular this way because of the presentation tools that makes them easy to use. Presentations make it easy to use templates, so we use templates. They make it easy to use bulleted lists, so we use bulleted lists. Also, they make it easy to throw items on screen, so we just paste them on screen. By using these features, we are making specific assumptions about the way people learn. Oh, I just posted this publicly. It says, unfortunately, many presentation features and techniques contradict current research in cognitive science. We can no longer expect our audiences to adapt to presentation features. Instead, we have to change our own way of thinking to conform to more relevant principles. We have one mind and 2 channels. Dual channels is the concept that people have separate information processing channels for visual and verbal information. The visual channel handles information presented to the eyes, such as illustrations, animation, video, and on-screen text. The verbal channel handles information presented to the ears, narration, or nonverbal sounds. The constraints on our processing capability forces us to make decisions about which pieces of information we pay attention to, and degree to which we should build connections between selected pieces of information and our existing knowledge. In a design presentation, we should ask, does the presentation take advantage of the dual channel structure by presenting complementary materials in word and pictures? Limited capacity is the concept that people can only pay attention to a few pieces of information in each channel at the same time. When an illustration is presented, the learner is only able to hold a few images in working memory at one time. These images reflect portions of the present material rather than an exact copy of the presented material. When a narration is presented, the learner is able to hold only a few words of working memory at one time. So you need to ask yourself, does the presentation take into consideration the limited capacity of the information processing channels by minimizing the chances of overloading your brain's memory? Active processing is the concept that people understand the presented material when they pay attention to the relevant material, organize it in their mind, and integrate it with their prior knowledge. In a presentation context, the question is, does the presentation promote active cognitive processing or learning by guiding the process of selecting, organizing, and integrating information? Our understanding of the way the mind works has three implications for presentations. Presentation should use both visual and verbal forms of communication. Filling slides with information will overload people's cognitive systems. The presentation should help learners select, organize, and integrate presented information. A set of research based on principles takes these implications into account and can reduce cognitive load in the presentation. These principles are the signaling principle, the segmenting principle, the modality principle, the multimedia principle, the coherence principle. The following slides describe the way we can apply these principles by using familiar presentations in new ways. The end result is less cognitive load on your audience, which can result in more effective communication of your story. The very first one is write a clear headline that explains the main idea on every slide. It's common to find a presentation with a slide that says title on top, or marketing, or objective, or second quarter projections. Titles usually serve as signposts to tell you where you are, but they don't offer explanations of the idea on the slide. There is a better way to help your audience understand more clearly. Research has found people learn better when the material is organized with outlines and a heading, the signaling principle. Instead of writing a title, write a headline that explains the main idea of every slide. Just as in newspapers, write your presentation headlines in an active voice, with a subject and a verb. Summarize the signal overriding idea of the slide in a clear and conversational language. This process of writing a headline will keep and clarify what you're thinking about. In presentations, the headline should be about 40 points of type using 2 lines so they can be read from the back of the room, and also can be read in the slide sorter view. Break up your story into digestible bites. This is the segmenting principle. It's easy to get caught up in the design of any single presentation slide, since the normal view of the program is the place where you design the individual slides. But when you focus on a single slide, it's easy to pile on information which only serves to shut down understanding. Another point of view can give new insight. People learn better when information is presented in bite-sized segments, the segmentation principle. Break up information through your presentation by referring back to the slide sorter view. From this perspective, you can read the headline you've written and see how the story flows. Your story should pave a way from one slide to the next without long pauses at any single slide. One technique is to duplicate the offending slide and taking out the information of a slide and a half. If you have too many slides for the time you have to speak, you can return to the slide sorter view and think about the ways you could distill the story down to its essence. Number 3 is reduce visual load by moving text off screen and narrating the content, the modality principle. If we approach a presentation slide as a Word document, we will naturally fill up it with large amounts of text. But when we display the project on a presentation on screen, the multimedia principles are better fit than print principles. A screen full of Word overloads the mind's visual channel. Research has found that people understand a multimedia explanation better when the words are presented as narration rather than on-screen text, the modality principle. Reduce visual overload by moving the text off screen and shift the processing to the auditory channel by narrating the context instead. The elegant way to accomplish this to the presentation is to use the Notes page view. Although it is not designed for this purpose, think of the Notes page view as a partnership between visual area above and verbal information. This presentation is an example of this technique. Writing your story helps you think through your ideas, increasing your confidence in your topic, reduces your need for notes when you narrate, and provides comprehensive use of handouts and when the presentation is printed and the notes in the note page format. Number 4, use visuals with words instead of words alone. It's common to see a series of presentation slides filled with bullet points, no visuals besides a logo and a colored background. There are a number of reasons we put bullet points on a slide. They are easier to produce than graphics. They remind us of what we want to say and speak. They provide a record of what is covered and what we want to say. But for whatever reason, we use bullets and text alone is simply not effective. Research has found that people learn better from words and pictures than from words alone, the multimedia principle. It's not easy to turn words into pictures, but the first three techniques in the presentation can help you in this stage. Number 1, writing headlines helps you clarify what you want to illustrate. 2, breaking your story into digestible bites reduces the amount of information to visualize. And 3, moving your text off-screen opens up more space for slides and images. Select photographs and clips from your organization's art department or commercial sources such as photos.com or other graphic photo places. Build diagrams and charts yourself from within the presentation. Remember that your primary job is to communicate something, and if it works for your audience, it'll work for you. Rigorously remove every element that does not support your main idea. When you think you are impressing people by putting everything you know on the presentation slide, you're actually doing the opposite by shutting down their cognitive processing. And when people are sitting, they are bored. They are less likely to think positive thoughts. When it comes to presentation, less is more. Researchers have found that people learn better when extraneous material is excluded rather than included, the coherency principle. Cut everything out of your presentation slides that does not support your main idea. One of the hardest things to do is to keep it simple. We have so much to say, we want everyone to know it too. But as Science of the Mind explains, if you put too much on the slide, people become quickly overwhelmed. One technique is to load up your first draft without regard for information overload, then make a copy and rigorously start cutting. Cut all text on screen that you are not going to narrate. Remove corporate logos unless you think the people will forget them. Delete complex pattern backgrounds that have nothing to do with the content on your slide. As a general rule of thumb, if you're not sure, cut it. You can always add it back later. This system was based on the book Multimedia Learning by Richard Meyer. Thank you, and that's the end of the presentation for today. And if any of you have any comments, you can post them in the comment section.